Okay, so this is just a very brief video to show you how you can use your channel MNI coordinates from your NIRS probe montage to get the Yeo Networks. So what do you need for this? Well, one, you can get the Yeo Networks folder from my GitHub. So it's going to have 3 folders in there as well as 2 scripts. So just from the start, we have this example folder. So this is just if you want to run an example of how the script works. I have channel MNI coordinates from one of my probes. And then we have 2 folders. One is called the Yeo-7 networks, another is the Yeo-17. So this is like, how much do you really want to break down that parcellation? If you're doing Yeo-7 networks, it's going to do just the basic networks, so default mode, VAT, DAT, frontoparietal. 17 is kind of break those apart a bit, so you might get default mode network A, B, frontoparietal A, and that's kind of helpful for us since we don't get subcortical, so if you want to be a little bit more specific. And then you have get YeoNet names, so this is actually a function. You shouldn't really change this. What you'll work off of is probe to network, which is a script, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's open that up. So I'm going to just open the probe to network script, and the things you're going to change are going to be your inputs. So your preprocessed directory is going to be where you have your channel MNI coordinates. So here I'm going to just pull the example that I've put onto my GitHub, but it is going to be specific to your study and where you have it located. And just as a reference, the channel MNI coordinates should be made from our preprocessing script. If you've made them on your own, that's fine as long as it's got the exact number of channels and the X, Y, and Z for the MNI coordinates. All right, the Yeo directory is this folder that you've pulled, which is the Yeo Networks. Where it's on your computer is dependent on you, so make sure that you change that. Right now, that's where it's located on my computer. I know my name is not Mike. It's just the name of my computer. All right, so those 2 things are specified here. And then the other things that you're going to change are going to be your number of channels. Also your number of parcellations, because this is originally from fMRI data and I just didn't want to change the name of this variable. So I have 42 channels in this example, but you might have a different number of channels because you have a different probe. So if you have like a full head, it might be 112. Just make sure you are specifying the correct number of channels. I'm going to keep it at 42. And you can choose if you want to do the 7 networks, so just the 7 networks, not in those like smaller parcellations, or the 17 networks, which are still going to be actually like kind of just the 7 networks, but just like the A, B, C. But let's do 7 for the example. So I'm going to do evaluate, and I've just made those variables. And now I'm just going to make sure that my scripts, so this script and my function, are just active in my MATLAB path, which they're located in my directory here. If you have these 2 scripts anywhere else, just make sure that it's active in your path. And I'm going to run the function. And boom, done. So now I get this YeoNet names, and it has all 42 of my channels, and we got 3 columns. So what are those 3 columns? Well, let's start with column 2 actually. So we have 7 networks, and so what it's saying is, okay, what network is each channel part of? So channel 1 is part of network 7, and what is that network? It's something we often refer to as the control network. You might also know it as frontoparietal or executive function. Often it's referred to as frontoparietal network, and so on. So like here, 7 is the default mode network. And then in this first column, it's just giving you like a little bit of a breakdown of like where that channel is really located. So it just always says 7 networks, but it's the left hemisphere, so LH. If it's RH, it's right hemisphere. It's again part of the control network, and it's like prefrontal. So let's just, as an example, we have this default mode network channel. It's prefrontal, it's right hemisphere, but if I scroll down, I'm going to start to see other default mode where it's like, oh, right hemisphere, and now instead of like prefrontal, it's PAR, which is just parietal. So it's just telling me it's in the parietal cortex, not the prefrontal cortex. So that's all that is. But yeah, that's it. It's pretty simple, but it just kind of gives you a nice little output of like what channels align with what networks. And hopefully that's helpful. I could also, let's just for fun, run the 17. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to change this to 17. So that's all I'm changing. I'm going to rerun it. And boom. So same thing, just outputs is 42 by 3. But now you're going to notice that we have a lot more network numbers. That's because it's parcellating it a bit more. So as you can see here, we have default B and default A. So now we're getting these channels that are actually part of a different network. So it really depends on like what you're doing. I like this because we don't get subcortical, so we don't get every network. So we're not going to get the limbic network. I don't measure occipital, so I don't have the visual network. So I like this because it gives me a little bit more nuance. But again, it just really depends on like what you're doing, and it's up to you. But yeah. All right, and that's it.